This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
No, Bryce Underwood is not the savior of Michigan football, and right now Michigan football doesn't need a savior. That and more next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Yes, caught.
They said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it, and a touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him, and a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. We are down to just about 2 weeks now until game week. Cannot wait. The season is nigh. The AP preseason poll is out. Michigan is ranked number 14. By the way, the last 3 times Michigan was ranked 14th in the AP poll. 2018, the Wolverines went 2002. 2006, the Wolverines went 11-1. 1997, the Wolverines went 12-0 and won the national title. Now, there's been other times Michigan's been ranked 14th in the preseason poll as well, including 1984 when we went 6-6, but that's not important now. We're going to just set that one aside. All right, go with the trend when it's your friend, all right? But one of the trends that I am seeing in social media leading up to the season, which of course is always a barren wasteland, it's where truth, humanity, logic, and reason go to die. Nevertheless, it's important. It is one of the primary ways we communicate with one another. And how's that working out for us, by the way? It looks like we're doing great. Anyway, one of the trends I'm seeing from our Bucknut friends.
Yeah, Bryce Underwood, he has to be a savior as a freshman.
No, he doesn't. Can he be a carbon-based life form? On 3rd and 7, can he complete a pass a couple times, maybe? I think we are underrating, if anything, underrating how bad Michigan's quarterback play was a year ago. It was primordial ooze. It was dreadful. It was dreck. It was terrible. It was the worst passing performance a Michigan offense has had since you go back to the era when Bo wasn't even trying to pass. We did not have a quarterback that wasn't a detriment to the team. Forget playmaker. Forget difference maker. Michigan played with 10 guys on offense last year, and the guy that we had to take off the field was the most important position on the entire team. And I think because Alex Orji was a good student, great kid, Davis Warren, good student, great kid, and then has a cancer story, I think that, we're kind of going soft on how bad it was. But it was bad. Catastrophically bad. And as someone that watches more college football than a man my age probably should, whether it's Michigan and everybody else, it was the worst quarterback position in the entire Power Four last year. And I don't even know who would be like second. I'd have to like sit down and come up with, who's challenging us for the bottom? Nobody. It was absolutely that bad. It's possible Purdue had 2 quarterbacks better than any of ours, and they sucked last year. So Michigan played without a quarterback who was not a detriment to the team. Michigan played without a quarterback who was not out there actively amongst the best defensive players the opposition had every single week. Davis Warren managed to do the impossible. He kept Arkansas State single-handedly in a football game with the University of Michigan. That's hard to do, but he managed to make it happen. So, no, we don't need a savior right now. We're doing pretty good. Last year was our rebuilding year, and we still beat Ohio State. We just put 3 guys in the first round of the NFL draft. We're 2 years removed from winning the national championship. We won 3 out of the last 4 Big Ten titles. We're doing okay. That's before we even get to like the history, which is pretty unprecedented in the history of the sport. So we're not in need of a savior here. You know what we need? A Jag. Not the car, just a guy. Just a guy. Like Cade McNamara, 21. Just a guy. What's Cade McNamara's big play? Dude, he hit Eric All on a 5-yard shallow cross in State College once. And then Eric All managed to outrun the entire Penn State secondary to the boundary and the end zone and won the game. That was essentially what he did. No, he was a steadying force. Didn't lose any games. Managed the offense. Just a guy. Just a guy. We just need a Jag. I don't even think Cade McNamara was Jag plus. Just a guy. Just a guy. And can Bryce Underwood, the top quarterback recruit in the country, the highest rated quarterback recruit signed by Michigan since Drew Henson, and many people think the overall best quarterback prospect since Trevor Lawrence, can he just be a Jag? Can he just be a guy? Like 60% completions, 15, 16, 17 touchdown passes, 8 or 9 picks. Can he do that? Because I kind of think he can do that. And when you look at the way the rest of our team is comprised, not to mention the way that we play ball. Right now, we want to go to a more quarterback-centric offense. That's why we signed him. That's why we signed Brady Smigel. That's why we signed Peter Bork. Right? So we've got a top-tier quarterback prospect now laid out in the next 3 classes. This incoming one next year and the year after. Michigan hasn't done that. Been stacking quarterback prospects like that in many a moon around here. Right? So Sherrone Moore is obviously not messing around. After he completely wet the bed in last year's quarterback situation, completely misevaluated it, and it nearly cost him an entire season, it's pretty clear we're loading up now. And we're just never going to be in a situation like that ever again, nor should we be. But can Bryce Underwood just be a guy? Just be a guy. Look at how Davis Warren's maybe career ended at Michigan. In the bowl game, he bails out of the pocket. He has a clean pocket. Go back and watch the play. He's got a clean pocket. Doesn't have to bail. Misses at least one guy downfield and runs himself right into a torn ACL. That's just kind of a metaphor for how the entire year went at quarterback last year. We beat Ohio State and we threw for 62 yards. Somewhere Kirk Ferentz is beaming. Okay? We don't need Bryce Underwood to be a savior in year 1, Bucknut. We beat you with half a quarterback tied behind our back. We beat you last year when our quarterback's best throw was to Jack Sawyer in the end zone. Okay? You're the guy that played for you and graduated on gold pants. That was his best throw of the year, maybe. So, no, we don't need a savior. Not the style of football we're playing, at least not yet. And eventually we'll hand this thing completely over to Bryce, and he'll look like a number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. This is probably not going to be that year, though. But for this year, with this defense, which is deep, fast, filthy, with this running game, can he be a Jag? Can he be just a guy? And every now and then he just, makes that little throw out in the flat, and every now and then hits a tight end for 6 yards on 3rd and 5, and every now and then just throws a throw it up to McCauley and see if he comes down with it. And right now, we're just a guy. Because if we had just a guy at quarterback last year, we might have been in the playoffs. We didn't even have just a guy. We didn't have a carbon-based life form at quarterback last year. It was a black hole, a void. That's what we had at quarterback a year ago. So, for once, I agree with the Bucknuts. Bryce Underwood is not going to be a savior in year one, but he doesn't need to be, and Michigan doesn't need one. We just need him to be a Jag, and I'm pretty confident that he can at least be that. Folks, the best way to support us here at Michigan Podcast is to do so via our Patreon page, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. We are posting picks there year round, whether it's Major League Baseball, whether it's college basketball, whether it's the NFL, and of course, college football. Our win total best bets, you would have gotten those, for example, before the market moved. About half the books in the last few days moved on Texas under 10.5 down to 9.5. If you were following us on Patreon when we posted that, you would have gotten that before that number moved, right? So we give you all kinds of great data and picks, PGA major picks as well. We've cashed 8 of the last 11 majors in professional golf. So if you want to support us on our Patreon page, it's just $10 a month there at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's right, just $10 a month. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. And thank you so very much if you're one of our supporters already. Well, let's find out what an actual Bucknut has to think about what I just had to say. Our good friend Mark Rogers is here with us on Michigan Podcast as we commence once again, the 10-minute war. Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Doing well, Steve. Of course, the season is upon us, so we get a really good Week 0 game with Iowa State and Kansas State for Armageddon, so looking forward to that.
Couple top 25 teams in the preseason AP poll. In fact, I don't know if you saw this. It's the first time Indiana has been in the preseason AP poll since 1969. So that's well before I was born. It's the highest ranking in the AP preseason poll for Illinois since 1990. All right, so now we're going back to, that was the team they brought everybody back, but Jeff George went pro, if you remember. So we're talking like Jason Verduzco took over at quarterback. That's a black. I can't believe I remember that dude's name. But we're talking like Howard Griffith, Dana Howard. Those guys were all on that team back then. And I believe it's the first time ever that Indiana and Illinois have both been ranked in a preseason AP poll since the preseason poll began.
And meet to open the Big Ten season. So yes. I think that's going to be a big barometer for a lot of people to say, okay, they're a pretender. We're going to keep them in the race. Indiana, by the way, is the all-time losingest program in the Power Four. They have never had consecutive 8-win seasons in the history of their school. Never. It never happened. Illinois is trying to have consecutive 10-win seasons for the first time in the history of its program. So enough on that. Let's get to the matter at hand with Michigan, who lost to both of those teams a year ago. I don't. What do you think of what I said here at the top? I actually agree with your fellow Bucknuts that Bryce Underwood is not going to be a savior as a freshman. I agree. I just don't think Michigan needs him to be. I think because of how likable of kids Alex Orji and Davis Warren, in particular with Warren's cancer story, were, and because they were backups on a team that won a natty and everything else, and very likable kids, I think everybody recognizes the quarterback play was bad. But I think if you just remove the emotion of liking the kids and went back and watched last year's season again, and I've watched some of it in this offseason, I mean, it's among the worst I've ever seen at any kind of a brand school, like in my lifetime. It was just consistently bad. Michigan played with 10 guys on offense last year, and the guy we took off the field was the most important position on the entire team. I think we were actually underrating how bad the quarterback play was. It was often the best defender the other team had was the Michigan quarterback. I just think he just needs to be a Jag. Can he be Wilton Spate? Can the number 1 overall recruit in the country be Wilton Spate? Can he be Cade McNamara? Just a guy. What was Cade McNamara's greatest throw at Michigan? A 5-yard shallow cross to Eric All, where he then ran the next 40 yards. Somehow a tight end outran the entire Penn State secondary. All right, to the end zone, across the field even. Had to cross the boundary to do it. I mean, that was his biggest throw he ever made. That was a 5-yard shallow cross. Mark, can he just be a guy? I think that's all we need him to be this year, is just a guy. But what do you think? So I'm going to throw another name into the mix in comparison. So Bryce Underwood, when you say a Jag, I think of a game manager.
Yeah.
I think of a guy that manages the game, does it rather well. doesn't shoulder the load, all those things that then fill in the blank in terms of names that we've seen from the past. I don't think of Bryce Underwood as that guy, though. You would think in a freshman season, maybe the final statistics turn out to be a Jag type of quarterback, but it's a lot of up and down, up and down, up and down, feast and famine because of the skill set. We're not talking about a guy that should eventually be a Jag. He should be a superstar. So he's got, of course, the skill set and the talent level to be spectacular on plays and then to make the big mistakes and to do those things. Now, Michigan doesn't want that. They'd rather have the Jag because of the rest of the team. And I think that's pretty much what another 5-star from a year ago turned out to be for Nebraska, Dylan Raiola. He was just a Jag. And if you didn't know that he was a 5-star, if you just watched the games, you would think, okay, they've made him into a game manager. This must be some journeyman type 3-star quarterback, 13 TDs, 11 picks, under 60%. Dana Hogerson did get a hold of Dylan Raiola the last 3 games and really improved his efficiency by just getting the ball out of his hand quicker and calling better plays. So I do think that maybe the Kirk Campbell transition out to a more capable offensive coordinator may really help Bryce Underwood, and we'll never know the difference necessarily, but that was a good move, pre-Bryce Underwood and his career. So, I know that you threw an over-under in regards to touchdown passes, and I wish I hadn't seen that because I looked at that and I thought, wow, that's a good number there, 21.5. That's a difficult decision to make. So I just looked at the schedule, thought about what kind of production they need out of Bryce Underwood or what he's more or less most probable to provide. I'm going about 2,700 yards on this season, 27-14, 21 TDs, just misses, 8 interceptions, hits on 61% of his passes, but it's going to be more or less, where's that distribution come from? Is it weighted evenly? And is it needed in the key situations? And does it come on third down against the good teams? That's more the question of what Bryce Underwood needs to be for Michigan this year.
Mark, if he does that, we're going to the playoff without question. In fact, you're a little higher on him than I am. I'm like 17 touchdowns, 8 or 9 picks, maybe a couple touchdown runs. Because here's the thing I'm also concerned. Here's what I'm really concerned about. I think he's the only playable quarterback we have. Now, that's 100% more playable quarterbacks than we had last year. So that is a market improvement, okay? But Mikey Keene's upper body injury, they had a scrimmage Saturday. I had some people that were there, very limited. This is after an entire offseason. I just kind of think we're dealing with a Jack Tuttle situation there. The amount of throws he can make, which is, it's a shame. I think he is the perfect either bridge or backup. Knows Chip Lindsey's system, had played at another school. He has a ton of experience, a lot of moxie. Frankly, I think if Mikey Keene was our quarterback last year, we're at least 9-3, frankly. Okay. But I don't expect much out of him this year, or at least at the beginning when we'd probably need him. Maybe if he can come back later in the year, by that time, you're kind of hoping your number 1 overall recruit kind of has, figured a lot of this out, right? It's those first couple road games at Nebraska, at Oklahoma, at USC. That's kind of where you're a little concerned about your just turned 18-year-old quarterback. But I don't think Keene is playable from a health perspective. Just watching Jaden Davis in the spring and last year, I don't think he's a playable quarterback. I just think that's largely a recruiting miss. And I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen Michigan recruit so aggressively the quarterback position in the next 3 classes. I don't think Davis Warren will be back in time for the year off of his ACL, but based on what I saw last year, he's not a playable quarterback. And then I think, is it Steven Garcia, the kid that was originally the Jake Garcia, that was originally the big-time recruit at Miami, never panned out. Went to East Carolina, got benched. I mean, there's 4 years of film that indicates he's not a backup quarterback. I'm sorry, that he's not a playable quarterback. So I think you're looking at a situation very similar to JJ's 2 years here, where they rarely ran him because they didn't have a provable or playable backup. I think the minute that it looks like any of these games are in hand, I think they're benching Bryce and putting somebody else in just to hand the ball off. So if he were to get 21 touchdowns, a lot of those are going to come in the most important games of the year, I think, which is why that is his stat line at the end of the year. At minimum, we're in the playoff. At minimum, I think.
And Steve, when you say we're going to be okay if Bryce Underwood's just a game manager, just a Jag, you mean playoff contention. You mean 9-3, 10-2.
Yeah, that going into the Ohio State game, whether we are 9-2 or whatever, but it would be recognized that if we won that game, we would likely be on the right side of the bubble to making the playoff. That's what I mean. Yes.
I will say this, Steve. The AP preseason poll came out. The coaches poll came out. Michigan's at number 14 in both poll. I will say that Michigan's better than roughly close to a third of the teams ahead of them. Like, I do think this is a really good football team. I love the running back pair of Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes. I love I'll back off on the offensive line in terms of loving they are not quite the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, most likely, of 21 and 22.
We have recruited very well there, but we might be one more year of development away from those guys really ascending on the depth chart. So I hear you.
I did a little run through the wide receivers in regards to, because we had that discussion a couple weeks ago.
Now it's going to take some time because there's freaking 16 of them, Mark. 16.
Yeah. So can any of these guys come through? And I'm not impressed with the recruiting rankings of these guys. So I'm trying to figure out, are there some possible gems? Now, Andrew Marsh is just a freshman, true freshman. So I can't think that a lot's going to be expected of him. But certainly at one point, people were excited about Marion Stewart, and Anthony Simpson is, of course, got a big reputation coming out of high school as a top 10 to 15 player in the country. But can he do it already in his young career? That I don't know. But it's defense and it's running game, a Michigan tried and true formula that has me pretty high on this team. I saw a stat today that this defense is one of only 4 teams in the country that has given up 20 or less points per game in 4 consecutive years. And I think that they'll fairly be in line, especially against the schedule. No, Illinois, Oregon, Penn State, Minnesota, Iowa, the better teams. And I know Minnesota and Iowa, you're not scared of their offense. And we're talking defense here. But in terms of wins and losses, that Michigan's going to be a Big Ten championship contender because of the formula and because Bryce Underwood, man, if he's a game manager, if he can show the ability to run the offense, be disciplined, not make mistakes, and then show you that special quality in spurts, give you those glimpses of the future, then that's the best I believe you can hope for.
Let's talk about your team for a few minutes, if you don't mind, while I got you here. And your quarterback battle. So there's a lot of conjecture right now in Michigan circles if Ryan Day's talk about your quarterback battle being neck and neck with Kreinholtz and Julian saying whether that's just coach speak or not. But remember, we had this conversation about a month or so ago that I was listening to Bobby Carpenter on another college football podcast talking about how he had been to all but 2 of Ohio State's spring practices, and he could not really tell a difference. In terms of, they're different players. Kreinholtz was a 3-sport star, so he's more of an athlete. But Sayin is clearly the more polished passer. But in terms of, so they're different types of players, but in terms of who was clearly moving to the forefront in the spring, he really did think it was neck and neck, and they had a lot of ups and downs as young quarterbacks do. So I'm inclined to think it is not coach speak by Ryan Day. But here's what I don't. So I believe Ryan at face value because it lines up with what I heard Bobby Carpenter say coming out of the spring. But I don't know. What do you think that means? Do you think that means that after being in a program like Ohio State for 3 years, a developmental prospect who's a really good athlete like Kreinholtz has really now taken a step forward, or Sayin, who is a bit of a munchkin, although he's got a great release and was a highly coveted prospect, is maybe not developing as fast as they had hoped? What do you think it is? I don't know. I'm asking.
Well, I think that, first of all, Ryan Day's track record with quarterback battles show us that he wants that sweet spot of he wants competition through the spring, through August, and then he wants to be able to find a spot about 10 days out of the season opener, especially when there's a season opener like this one, to where he can say, okay, I've seen enough. This guy has separated himself, and he had to separate himself because I made this a true quarterback battle, and he couldn't just go through the motions and know that he was the guy, that I wanted these guys to compete for the job. And I wanted to see if their competition would, breed success and raise the level of play for both of these guys. So this has been a Ryan Day tactic since he's been the head coach at Ohio State, first and foremost. Secondly, I'm not at practice to make those evaluations. I do have 3 Ohio State guys in particular that say that they think Julian Sayin looks every bit the part. Mm-hmm. And they didn't say that in the spring. They said there's a lot of growing up to do, but they've said that early in the August practices that he looks much improved. Overall, speaking of it, since I brought up the preseason polls, what I find interesting as a bit of a contradiction by the groupthink media is that Ohio State is safely in the top 5 in the country based on just about everybody. Okay, but no one is going out on a limb to say this team's going to repeat as a national championship team. Well, the logic would say that a team that plays this tough of a schedule, that has this young of a team, if they are a shoo-in to be a top 5 team, but we are putting all our chips on the side of Penn State, Clemson, and Texas to win the national championship, wouldn't said team, Ohio State, that's a young team against a very difficult schedule, if we're confident they're going to be a top 5 team, why would they not be a serious contender as a national champion? Because they're going to do nothing but get better. And if they've weathered this schedule, they're going to arrive in the playoffs as a pretty formidable team.
Yeah, to me, I guess I think if you're in the preseason top 5, you are considered a national championship contending team, I guess is how I would view it. But I don't disagree with you. I think if your analysis, though, is I just think in general teams don't repeat. Now, Georgia did it recently, but it is very difficult to repeat as national champions, then I don't disagree, especially when you have Matt Patricia on your staff. So let's talk about this, since you brought up the AP poll. 29 of the last 31 years, a team in the preseason top 10 finished the regular season unranked. Michigan was actually that team a year ago. Now, they were number 8 in the preseason poll and then finished unranked at the end of the season after going 7-5. All right, so I was a little surprised after beating Alabama, getting to 8 wins, that we weren't like 23rd or 24th, but nope, they weren't in the final AP poll either. Who do you think is the team most likely in the AP top 10 to keep that streak alive? I'm going to vote for LSU. I think the schedule's tough. I think that first game against Clemson, they're talking about a strained patella for Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, that's the kind of thing that can linger. That's the kind of thing you're missing some camp timing with your receivers. Their schedule's hard. I also think that's a fan base that is waiting to turn on their head coach. And I do think that wasn't the decisive factor in us getting Bryce, but I think it was an underrated factor. Is Bryce was at the game. That was when he took his official visit to LSU, is when the fans were booing to fire Brian Kelly. And that video went viral with Kelly in that young player's face, telling him, "You're not effing coachable right now. You're not effing coachable right now." Right? And then Bryce comes home and it's a mini big house there, at his high school with all the Michigan fans sitting there in the stands. So I don't think it was a decisive factor, but I do think it was one of those little anecdotal things, if you're already thinking about it, that might have helped spur this along. I think that's a fan base that is almost hoping to turn on its Yankee coach that's not the most likable of figures, even when things are going well. So I'm going to say it's LSU. Who do you think it might be?
Okay, so let's not forget Florida State. They were
that was another team. I forgot they were in the top 10 last year, and then they did finish 10 losses. Yes, yeah.
So we're getting at the heart of what drives me crazy about preseason rankings in particular. Not that I don't think they're fun, but I know directly from having conversations with AP voters that many of them aren't telling us who they believe are the 25 best teams in the country. That's how I would approach this. And that's how I have approached it when I've released preseason or off-season top 25s. This is who I believe are the 25 best teams in the country, 1 through 25. I'm not looking at schedules. They're many of them are making projections or predictions to tell us, I may think that this is the 15th best team in the country, but they've got a weak schedule, so I'm going to put them 7th. Mm-hmm. They're making those kind of projections. So just as an aside, that's what I hate about this sort of thing, is that these guys are making predictions based on schedules and not evaluating the teams. And I question their knowledge of most of these teams anyway. To not repeat what you had to say about LSU, and I know from our conversation a couple months ago, you don't like LSU much. Not a good team.
I don't like teams that typically return like 0 offensive line starts. That's just, to me, that's a team that that's why I'm kind of down on Texas. And they just lost their starting tackle in camp, by the way, Texas did.
Yes.
Okay, so, the offensive line starts, I think, is a sneaky important metric, particularly in the portal era, because it's really hard just to plug guys in there and have them be in sync. But I digress. Go ahead. Yes.
I agree. Consider Clemson. Not that I don't think they're going to finish in the top 10, but they are getting so much love as a serious national championship contender. Okay, this team brought back a load of talent. So if you know college football and you know personnel and know rosters and know the NFL projection on these guys, they are loaded on defense. But they're bringing back productive defensive players that produced the 85th rushing defense in the country. They were bad on defense last year. This was not a vintage Clemson team on defense. Yep. They've got no running backs coming back. They may play a 5-star freshman, true freshman, or the main guy might be a converted wide receiver, Adam Randall. They've got Klubnik, who I think is much improved, had a great season last year, might be the best quarterback in the nation coming back. But this was not, they were a complete paper champion last year. Their best win during the regular season was a 7-6, a bad 7-6 Pitt team. They beat no one last year, and they're bringing everyone back. So I don't know where to really weigh the Clemson factor on all of this, because part of it tells me when I look at the roster and the players, I think that they're loaded, but they just weren't a good football team last year, and they're coming back this season with the same team. But I'll fill in the blank with Oregon, since you're going the LSU route. Although Oregon dips into a fairly favorable Big Ten schedule, that would shy me away from being bold and bullish about this.
They have a 3-game schedule, Mark. Iowa on the road, Penn State on the road, and there's another game. It's not Michigan this year.
Well, they get... Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember.
But it's basically a 3-game season. They could lose all 3 of those, and they're still. I can't see the other 9. They're huge favorites in. But I
see. This is where I'm going to. I don't believe that Oregon's I don't believe they're the 7th best team in the country. This is like Nebraska getting preseason top 25 votes. I do not think that they're anywhere close to being a top 25 team. They may finish in the top 25 because they've got such a lousy schedule. And I do believe that that's a game that I know Michigan fans are looking at, Nebraska fans are looking at as being a statement game for them. But there's no comparison between Nebraska and Michigan's rosters. Now, Nebraska may give them a fight because of the atmosphere, and we saw that in 2021 when Michigan showed up and barely pulled out a game. But that's where the scheduling factor in this comes into play. I don't think Oregon is the 7th best team in the country this year.
Good stuff, my friend. As always, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
You bet. This week's X-Poll results, we asked you, I'm putting the over-under on Bryce Underwood touchdown passes during the 2025 season at 21.5, which would actually rank him among the top 10 in season touchdown passes at Michigan all time. 57% of you said under, 43% of you said over. Those of you that bet under, I second that emotion, Smokey. I just think we're going to run the ball too effectively. I also think that he's really the only playable quarterback we have, as we just discussed with Mark Rogers. So games against New Mexico, Central Michigan, Purdue, Maryland, Northwestern, I think as soon as the game looks like it's at hand, I think it's sit down, young buck. We'll see you next week. So again, I'm looking for 15, 16, 17 touchdown passes, 8 or 9 picks, maybe another 2 or 3 touchdown runs to keep a defense honest. And we're going to call it a pretty solid freshman year for Bryce Underwood. So I'd be on the under as well. That brings us to our feedback of the week. Otto Von Aaron says, Steve, I love you, man, but you pucker so quickly. It's true. It's true. Like 5 minutes after I posted Tigers look like a spent force, Matt Vierling hit a 3-run home run and they ended up winning the game. So I am a pucker. And I'm not ashamed. I used to be. I used to be ashamed at how soft I was. But as I get older, I'm actually quite proud. I've learned that it's really not a detriment. It's wisdom. It's wisdom to guard your heart, to just be prepared for constant and persistent and consistent letdown. And that way you're just really never disappointed when it happens over and over and over again. So I used to be ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I'm an absolute pucker. You do not want me in your final group on the 18th hole at Augusta National. I'm going to pucker like a mother, okay? I mean, I'm going to pucker like David Duval the entire 2000 aughts. All right? I mean, I'm going to pucker. The first sign of adversity, I'm tapping out. I'm benching everybody. I'm absolutely revoking every scholarship, and everyone's fired. And I'm convinced we're going to lose. It's just my way. And it's how I avoid being disappointed in life, by just staying disappointed. Again, I'm not ashamed. I just think it's wisdom. That'll do it for this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, comment right here, whether you're on YouTube, iTunes, or elsewhere. All those things help us to find more Michigan fans just like you, and we appreciate all of that stuff, so thank you very much. We'd also appreciate it if you followed us in between episodes on X, at Michigan Podcast on X, at Michigan Podcast on X. Until next week, when we're back again. That's right, we're back now to week now that the season is nigh. Until next week, I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.